Okay, so we are on to our second to last problem, and this is where it gets to the most difficult part. But hopefully, if you have understood the last videos, you shouldn't have too much trouble here. It's just a process you need to memorize. But at least you don't have you're not doing anything really new. You're just combining past steps. So we're doing a factoring a trinomial here, but this time notice a is not equal to 1. So in those other two problems that we did, a was equal to 1, at least after we factored GCF out. And we were able to do a shortcut, but here we can't do that. So you'll see the whole full process in this problem. First of all, like I said before, you need to check for a GCF. For a trained eye, I don't need to break this down to see if there's a GCF or not, because I know 5 is 1 times 5, 13 is 1 times 13. So already these have nothing in common besides a 1. There won't be a GCF. But even if they did, 6 is 2 and 3, and that has nothing in common with those. So none of these have anything in common. And all of them would have to have one thing in common besides a 1 to take out a GCF. So for me, I can just look at this and say, okay, I know there's not a GCF. But if you need to, break it down, see if they have anything in common. Okay. So we're going on to do our x factor. So we make the x just like before. It's beautiful x. And then first times last, just like before, a times c. But here a is not 1, a is 6. So we do 6 times negative 5. And that is negative 30. Okay? Let me write that a bit bigger. Negative 30. Now, we got our negative 30 from 6 times negative 5, a times c. Now b is negative 13. So we're going to put that down here, negative 13. Okay, so we have negative 30, and we're going to find two numbers that multiply to negative 30 and add to negative 13. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to write every number I can think of that multiplies to negative 30, but that adds to negative 13. Okay, so I know negative 1 and 30. I know 1 and negative 30. I know 2 and negative 15. I know negative 2 and positive 15. I know 3 and negative 10. I know negative 3 and 10. I know 4 doesn't go into 30. 5 does. 5 and negative 6. And 6 and negative 5. Now you see how these are sort of paired together? Negative 1 and 30, and 1 and negative 30, 2 and negative 15, negative 2 and positive 15, etc. If one of these, well, you'll see in a second. Okay, so what's negative 1 plus 30? That's 29. I'm going to go ahead and put a plus in each of these so you know what's going on. Okay. Let me go ahead and do this. So, let's think about the next one. So for the next one, we have 1 plus negative 30. Plus a negative we all know is a minus. So 1 minus 30 is actually just going to be negative 29. So you see how these are opposites? That's always going to be the case. So here we're going to get 2 plus negative 15. Oh, that's negative 13. Well, the negative 2 plus 15 I know is going to be positive 13. Oh, wait. Negative 13, that's what we wanted. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and do all these so you can see that pattern continuing. We get negative 7. We get positive 7. We get negative 1. And we get positive 1. Okay? So, we know it's not going to be any of these. It's going to be this one that gives us negative 13, because that's what we were looking for, negative 13, and there it is. So we got 2 and negative 15 for our answers. So I'm going to write those here just like before. But without the strikeout. 2 and negative 15 are our answers. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this side work. So I got 2 and negative 15. I'll leave that for a second actually, because some of you might still be writing that or something. 2 and negative 15. So we got, before we just would have said x plus 2, x minus 15, and that would have been it. But this time we don't have a plain x squared like before. We have a number in front. We have a 6x squared. So what we have to do is always bring down this first term. Okay, always bring down this first term. So I'm bring down my actually, this is what I'm going to do. I'm bring down my 6x squared. Okay, so always bring down that first term. Bring that down. Then I'm also always going to bring down this last term. Okay, so I'm going to bring that down as well. Now this middle term gets replaced. Negative 13x, whatever is here, always gets replaced by your two answers. We just found out that 2 minus 15 is negative 13. So they're the same thing. It's just I'm kind of expanding it, you could say. So plus 2x minus 15x. And like we just said, 2x minus 15x is negative 13x. So you're not changing the problem. You're just making it look different. And now that we've done that, we're going to take the GCF. But when we do GCF just like before, we're going to do it just like before, except we only take the GCF of these first two, and then we take the GCF of these second two. We do them separately. So let's do the first two first. What goes into 6x squared? We got 2 and 3, 2 times 3, and then we have xx. Okay? And then in the second one, we have a 2 and an x. And that's it. Let me go ahead and put my plus in there as well. Okay, so what do these two have in common? Well, they both have a 2, and they both have an x. Okay, so I'm going to come down here. I'm going to write my 2x. Actually, I'm going to leave a bit more space so I can do the other one. Okay, 2x, because that's what they both had. And then what's left over? Well, I have a 3x plus nothing here, so I'm just going to put a 1 to hold the spot. Okay? Now I'm going to do these right here. I'll do them over here so you don't get confused about the spacing. Okay, so I have a negative, and I know 15 is 5 and 3, and then I have an x. And then over here I have a negative and a 5, and that's it. So I'm going to circle what they have in common. Well, they have a 5 in common. Now this is something people often forget. They have a negative in common, so I'm going to circle that negative. Okay? So I come down here, and I put my minus 5, because that's what they had in common, right by my old answer, my first answer, the first part of the next step, I should say. So minus 5, and then I have a 3x left over, and then I have nothing left over here, so I'm going to put a plus 1. Remember, whenever there's nothing left over, you need to put a 1 to hold the spot. Okay, so that's my second to last step, almost done. For my final answer, I'm going to write it up here. Actually, I'll put it below. I'll just move this up. Okay. For my final answer, I get, to write your final answer, you look at what's in the parentheses. It should be the same in both. 3x plus 1, 3x plus 1. If it's not, you probably made a mistake. If it's the same but the signs are changed, just change this sign out here and then both of the signs in here, and then it should be the same. Okay, that was just an aside. Back to the problem. So we have 3x plus 1 in both parentheses. So that's the first factor. Okay, if you have the same thing repeated in parentheses, which you should, that's your first factor. Your second factor is what's on the outside. I have 2x on the outside of this one, and then I have minus 5 on the outside of this one. If it were just a 5, I would put plus 5. Okay, and that's it. Those are our two factors.